What if the greatest lie ever told wasn't that gods don't exist, but that certain humans speak for them? In the quiet moments before dawn, when doubt creeps through the cracks of certainty, every believer has felt it. The whisper that maybe, just maybe, they've been worshiping the messenger instead of the message. We are creatures desperate for meaning, clinging to stories that promise us we matter in an indifferent cosmos, even when those stories require us to surrender our most precious gift, our ability to think for ourselves. The prophet stands before you, eyes blazing with divine certainty, claiming exclusive access to the infinite, and in that moment, you must choose between your own inner voice and their borrowed authority. History's greatest tragedy isn't that we invented gods, but that we allowed certain men to become their gatekeepers, their interpreters, their earthly representatives, with unquestionable power over our souls. Jesus walks across water, while his followers drown in dogma. Muhammad receives revelations, while his adherents lose themselves in ritual. The Buddha achieves enlightenment, while Buddhists cling to his words like life rafts. Every prophet becomes a prison when their teachings transform from invitation into obligation, from wisdom into worship, from liberation into a new form of spiritual slavery we mistake for salvation. The child who questions why they must believe what they cannot see is told to have faith, as if faith were more valuable than the curiosity that could actually lead them home. We've created a world where following ancient instructions matters more than following our own moral compass, where obeying distant voices trumps trusting the wisdom that emerges from our lived experience. The prophet's greatest miracle isn't healing the sick or raising the dead. It's convincing millions of people that they're spiritually blind without someone else's vision guiding them forward. In the beginning was the Word, we're told. But which word? Whose voice? And why must we believe it came from somewhere else instead of recognizing the divine spark within ourselves? The marketing genius of organized religion lies in making you feel broken first, then selling you the cure in the form of submission to someone else's alleged divine connection. Jesus never wrote a book. Muhammad's words were compiled by others. Buddha's teachings were passed down through oral tradition. Yet we're told to live by texts filtered through centuries of human interpretation and agenda. The prophet becomes a mirror in which followers see not themselves, but what they've been taught to see, sacrificing their authentic spiritual experience for the comfort of collective certainty. Every time you suppress your doubts to maintain your faith, you choose their truth over your truth, their experience over your experience, their authority over your inner knowing. The most dangerous sentence in human language isn't, "There is no God." It's, "God told me what you should do," spoken by someone who's never met the divine personally. We are taught to pray to distant heavens while ignoring the sacred conversations already happening within our own consciousness, as if enlightenment could only come through external validation. The prophet's followers often become more fanatical than the prophet himself, defending interpretations of teachings that may have been misunderstood, mistranslated, or completely fabricated across generations of retelling. Jesus spoke in parables because direct truth was too dangerous for his time, yet his followers built literal institutions on metaphorical foundations, missing the deeper invitation entirely. Muhammad emphasized direct relationship with Allah, yet his followers created a priesthood of scholars who mediate that very relationship he said should be unfiltered and personal. The Buddha warned against spiritual materialism and attachment to teachers, yet Buddhism became another system where enlightenment is franchised through authorized lineages and certified masters. Every prophet who ever lived faced the same choice their followers face today: trust the inner voice or submit to external authority. and prophets, by definition, chose inner voice. The cosmic joke is that prophets are remembered for their obedience to divine will, but they were actually rebels who trusted their own spiritual experience over the religious authorities of their time. You are told that humility means accepting what you cannot understand, but true humility might mean admitting that your own spiritual experience deserves the same respect you give ancient texts. The prophet's message gets buried under the weight of institutions built in their name, like trying to hear a whisper through the thunderous noise of religious machinery. We worship the pointing finger instead of looking where it points, mistaking the messenger for the destination, the map for the territory, the menu for the meal itself. Every commandment that feels unnatural to your moral intuition isn't a test of faith. It's evidence that someone else's spiritual experience is being imposed on your unique soul. The divine, if it exists, is not hiring human resources managers to screen applications for enlightenment through specific belief requirements and ritual compliance tests. When you follow someone else's path to God, you might arrive at their God, not yours. And their God might have nothing to do with the infinite mystery that calls to your heart. The prophet's greatest teaching is often how they trusted themselves enough to question everything, yet their followers are taught that questioning is the enemy of spiritual progress. We are told that ancient wisdom is superior to modern insight, as if human consciousness stopped evolving when the last prophet died, as if revelation ended with their final breath. The mystic finds God in silence. The prophet claims to speak for God in words, and the follower mistakes the words for the silence from which all truth emerges. Your ancestors who followed different prophets were convinced they were right too, lived entire lives devoted to other stories, died believing other truths. What makes your inherited beliefs more valid than theirs? The marketplace of spirituality is crowded with salespeople claiming exclusive distribution rights to salvation. Each prophet's brand competing for market share in your soul's economy. Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, each pointed toward the same essential mystery, but their followers built walls around their pointing fingers, creating separate kingdoms from a unified truth. The prophet's tragedy is that they become idols against their will, their humanity forgotten in favor of their mythology, their struggles erased to create perfect vessels for projection. We are more comfortable with prophets who lived thousands of years ago than with the prophetic voice that might be emerging within ourselves. Right now, today. The voice that tells you to question prophets might be more divine than the voice that tells you to follow them, but you'll never know unless you listen. Every generation produces individuals who challenge spiritual orthodoxy and speak uncomfortable truths, but we prefer dead revolutionaries to living ones who might disturb our comfort. The prophet's original audience was often hostile because transformation is threatening, yet modern followers worship the same message they would have rejected if delivered by their contemporaries. Sacred texts are edited compilations of remembered conversations, translated across cultures and centuries, interpreted by committees with political agendas, not direct downloads from divine consciousness. The prophet's words were filtered through the consciousness of scribes, translators, editors, and institutional authorities, each adding their own understanding, bias, and agenda to the final product. We treat ancient spiritual texts like instruction manuals for reality, but reality is not a machine that comes with a universal user's guide written for all times and places. The divine speaks every language, including yours, in the dialect of your specific life experience. You don't need ancient tongues to access what is timelessly present right now. Your spiritual hunger is real. Your longing for meaning is valid. Your desire for connection is sacred. But maybe the feast is already spread before you. waiting for your direct participation. The prophets' power came from their willingness to stand alone with their truth against the world, yet their followers find safety in crowds, numbers, and institutional validation. We are taught that spiritual pride is dangerous, but intellectual cowardice, the refusal to think for ourselves, might be the greater sin against our divine potential. Every prophet was once considered a heretic by the religious establishment of their time, suggesting that today's heretics might be tomorrow's prophets, if we had eyes to see. The mystic's direct experience threatens the prophet's mediated authority, which threatens the institution's monopoly on access to the divine. A chain of spiritual politics disguised as salvation. When you pray, whose voice answers? When you meditate, what arises? When you contemplate existence, what knows itself through your awareness? This is your unmediated spiritual data. The prophet promises to lead you home, but what if you were never lost? What if the journey is not toward some distant salvation, but into the sacredness of this moment? We are told to become like little children to enter the kingdom of heaven, yet children ask endless questions, the very behavior religions discourage in their adult followers. The prophet's teaching degrades with each retelling. Like a song passed through generations of singers, each adding their own interpretation until the original melody becomes unrecognizable noise. Your doubt is not the absence of faith. It's the presence of intellectual honesty, the refusal to pretend certainty where mystery reigns, the courage to admit confusion. Every scripture claims to be the final word from the infinite, but infinity cannot be contained in finite language, cannot be limited to specific historical moments or cultural contexts. The prophet's message was revolutionary for their time and place, but what revolution does your time and place require? What comfort zones need disruption in your generation? We memorize ancient prayers while ignoring the prayer that wants to emerge from our own heart, the personal conversation seeking expression through our unique spiritual vocabulary. The divine, if it exists, is not threatened by your questions, not diminished by your doubts, not requiring your submission to validate its infinite nature. You have been convinced that spiritual truth requires external validation, but what if your own consciousness is a valid source of insight into the nature of existence? The prophet's followers often demonstrate less wisdom, compassion, and moral clarity than thoughtful atheists who take ethical responsibility without divine command or reward motivation. We are told that life without a prophet's guidance is meaningless, but meaning emerges from engagement with existence, not from following someone else's interpretation of existence. The cosmic consciousness that prophets claim to access is not limited to specific historical individuals. It is the birthright of every aware being capable of contemplating their own existence. Your spiritual experience belongs to you, not to institutions claiming authority over your soul, not to traditions demanding conformity to their interpretation of divine will. The prophet's greatest gift was not their specific teachings, but their demonstration that individual consciousness can touch transcendent reality, a demonstration you can repeat personally. We worship the courage of ancient truth-tellers while lacking the courage to tell our own truth, to trust our own experience, to stand alone with our authentic spiritual discoveries. The voice that speaks through genuine spiritual experience is recognizable not by its claims to authority, but by its tendency to increase love, wisdom, and freedom in the listener. Every prophet started as a seeker like you, wrestling with existence's mysteries, finding their own path through the darkness, until followers turned their questions into your answers. The sacred is not confined to ancient texts, distant heavens, or special people. It permeates this moment, This breath, this awareness that knows itself through your consciousness right now. You are not broken, lost, or spiritually inadequate. You are a conscious being, capable of direct relationship with whatever mystery animates existence, requiring no intermediary or institutional permission. The most dangerous prophet might be the one you discover in the mirror, trusting your own deepest wisdom over the inherited certainties of those who claim to speak for gods they've never met.